Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The Etherian High Council chamber hummed with tension. 12 silver-skinned beings sat around a circular table, their translucent robes catching the light of 3 artificial suns that hovered above them. At the center of the table, a holographic projection of Earth rotated slowly. They've reached quantum communication capabilities 73 years ahead of our projections, Elder Trant declared, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Their weapons technology is advancing at an alarming rate. And their population, added Counselor Ada, her crystalline eyes narrowing. 8 billion souls, all consuming, expanding, destroying their own habitat yet somehow surviving. The Grand Architect, oldest among them, raised a 6-fingered hand. The chamber fell silent. We have monitored 17,000 developing species across our galaxy. Only humans have shown such unpredictability. He spoke the last word as though it tasted foul. They must be assessed for potential threat elimination. A door materialized in the seamless wall, and through it strode a figure that commanded immediate attention. Reyna Alistar moved with lethal grace, her violet skin luminous against the white uniform that hugged every perfect curve of her body. Silver hair cascaded down her back in an immaculate wave, and her eyes, bright emerald green with gold flecks, surveyed the room with calculating precision. Operations Specialist Alistar, the Grand Architect acknowledged. You understand why you've been summoned. Reyna bowed, a precise 45-degree angle. I am to infiltrate Earth, identify their weaknesses, and determine whether humanity poses a sufficient threat to warrant planetary neutralization. Correct. Elder Trant gestured toward the hologram. You will be inserted into a population center called New York City. Our intelligence suggests it offers optimal diversity for data collection. Your physical modifications have been approved, added Ada. Your skin tone will cause minimal alarm in that region. They will assume it's something they call body modification. Your other attributes have been calibrated to ensure cooperation from male specimens. Reyna's expression remained impassive, though a muscle twitched in her jaw. She was a warrior, not a seduction operative. But orders were orders. You have 14 Earth days, the Grand Architect said. At the end of that period, you will deliver your assessment. Remember, efficiency, precision, detachment. He paused. And Specialist Alistar? No native contact beyond what is necessary for your mission. Reyna nodded once. I will not fail the Council. As she turned to leave, none of the Council members noticed the brief flicker of curiosity in her eyes as she glanced back at the spinning blue planet. Hank Wintermute was having a shit day, which made it pretty much like any other day lately. Hey, lover boy, called Miguel from behind the bar. Table 7 needs another round, and maybe try smiling this time. Not everyone wants their whiskey served with a side of existential dread. Fuck off, Hank replied without heat, grabbing the tray of drinks. At 32, he'd spent the last decade mixing drinks at the Neon Tide, one of Manhattan's more successful speakeasies, though the term was just marketing these days. The place combined 1920s aesthetics with enough neon to induce seizures, all hidden behind an innocuous storefront advertising vintage vinyl records. He navigated through the Thursday night crowd, depositing the cocktails at table 7 with practiced efficiency. The 3 Wall Street types barely acknowledged him, 2 engrossed in their conversation about market derivatives or yacht sizes or whatever the hell people with money talked about. Back at the bar, Hank checked his watch. 2 more hours till closing. Cheer up, Miguel said, sliding next to him to make a complicated tequila concoction. At least we're not stuck in corporate hell like these losers. Says the guy opening his own bar next month. Miguel grinned. You could have been my partner if you hadn't blown your savings on that disaster with Jessica. Don't remind me, Hank muttered. His ex-fiancée had convinced him to invest in her revolutionary app for pet psychology. The app failed spectacularly. Jessica left with a venture capitalist, and Hank was back to square one, mixing drinks and wondering where his life had gone wrong. I'm just saying, you're too talented to waste away here. Those recipes you create? Magic, man. It was true. Despite his reluctance to admit it, Hank had a gift. He could taste a flavor once and deconstruct it perfectly, could combine unlikely ingredients into harmonies that made people close their eyes in pleasure. It was the one thing he had inherited from his father, that and a box of cryptic journals he'd never managed to fully decipher. William Wintermute had been a government scientist with a drinking problem and a paranoid streak a mile wide. Most of Hank's childhood memories involved his father locked in his study, muttering about non-terrestrial entities and classified contact protocols. When he died 10 years ago, he left behind indecipherable notes about some secret project called Handshake, and a son who wanted nothing to do with conspiracy theories or government secrets. "Holy shit," Miguel whispered, breaking Hank's reverie. "Don't look now, but we've got a live one at the entrance." Hank looked anyway, and for a moment forgot to breathe. She stood in the doorway, scanning the room with a curious intensity that seemed simultaneously lost and hyper-aware. Her skin was a stunning shade of violet, the kind of high-end body modification that cost more than he made in a year. Silver hair fell in perfect waves around a face that belonged on magazine covers and her body. Christ, her body was the kind of perfection that made men write bad poetry and start wars. But it was her eyes that truly arrested him, emerald green with flecks of gold, almost luminous in the dim light of the bar. They locked onto him for a moment, and Hank felt a jolt run through his body like he'd touched a live wire. "Dibs," said Miguel. "In your dreams," Hank replied automatically, already moving toward the entrance. The woman approached the bar with precision, each step deliberate as though she were calculating the exact force needed for bipedal locomotion. She wore a simple black dress that somehow looked both extremely expensive and like she'd never worn a dress before. "Hi there," Hank said, summoning his professional bartender smile. "Welcome to the Neon Tide." Up close, her skin was even more extraordinary, not the flat purple of traditional dye, but a subtle, almost luminescent violet with underlying tones that shifted in the light. Either she had spent a fortune on the most advanced body modifications available, or— Hank shut down that train of thought. His father's paranoia had no place here. "I require a beverage," she stated. Her voice was melodic but oddly formal, with an accent he couldn't place. "That's generally why people come to bars," he replied with a slight smile. "Any preferences? Sweet, sour, strong?" She blinked, those remarkable eyes focusing on him with laser intensity. "I am unfamiliar with the options. I would appreciate a recommendation based on cultural significance." Definitely foreign, Hank thought. Probably European aristocracy experimenting with body mods and slumming it in New York. "Well, in that case, let me introduce you to an American classic with my own twist." He gestured to a stool. "Mind if I ask your name?" "Raina." She sat with perfect posture, hands resting precisely on her knees. "And you are?" "Hank Wintermute, at your service." He gave a slight bow, surprising himself with the formality. Something about her made him want to up his game. "So, Raina, where are you visiting from?" "I am." She hesitated, almost imperceptibly. "From abroad, here to study American culture and behaviors." "An anthropologist?" A slight smile touched her lips. In a manner of speaking, Raina calculated that her cover story was functioning adequately. The human specimen, Hank Wintermute, appeared to accept her explanation without suspicion. Her neural implant was collecting valuable behavioral data as she observed the establishment. This bar seemed to be a crucial social gathering point for humans, despite the inefficient use of space and excessive noise levels. The multitude of scents and sounds threatened to overwhelm her enhanced senses, but she maintained her composure. She watched Wintermute's movements as he combined liquids with practiced efficiency. According to her mission briefing, alcohol consumption was a significant weakness in human society, a chemical that reduced inhibitions and cognitive function, yet humans willingly ingested it for pleasure. "Here we go," Wintermute said, placing a glass before her containing an amber liquid with floating vegetable matter and ice. A Wintermute old-fashioned, bourbon infused with vanilla and orange peel, bitters, a touch of maple instead of sugar, and a twist of lemon. Raina eyed the concoction warily. Her biological modifications would prevent actual intoxication, but she needed to maintain her cover. She lifted the glass, noting how the human watched her with anticipation. "This is a traditional ritual?" she asked. Wintermute laughed, a sound that produced an unexpected neural response in her sensory cortex. "Taking the first sip? Yeah, I guess you could call it that, especially when the bartender's watching." Raina raised the glass to her lips and took a small sip. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Her enhanced taste receptors, designed to detect even the most subtle poisons, exploded with information. Sweet, bitter, smoky, fruity, complex layers of flavor cascaded through her neural pathways. Her pupils dilated involuntarily, and she couldn't suppress the small gasp that escaped her lips. "That good, huh?" Wintermute asked, looking pleased. Good was entirely inadequate. Her species consumed nutrition in efficient capsules, designed purely for sustenance. The concept of flavor as pleasure was foreign, decadent, almost obscene. "It is." She searched for an appropriate term. "Extraordinary." She took another sip, larger this time. Heat bloomed in her chest, spreading outward to her limbs. Her implant registered elevated heart rate and dopamine levels. This wasn't just data collection anymore. This was experience. "Whoa, maybe slow down a bit if you're not used to drinking," Wintermute cautioned as she nearly finished the glass. "I require another," Raina stated, pushing the empty glass forward. The directness of her demand caused Wintermute to raise his eyebrows. "Coming right up," he said, "but this one's on the house." "The building will not collapse from the weight of a beverage," she replied, confused. Wintermute laughed again. That sound that somehow activated pleasure centers in her brain that should not be responding to audio stimuli. "It means it's free, a gift." He began mixing another drink. "I don't make this particular version for just anyone, you know. Only for special customers." Raina froze, her hand halfway to the new glass he had placed before her. Her cultural briefing flashed through her mind with crystal clarity. In Etherian society, gifts were sacred bonds. To create something unique for another and declare them special was the most significant declaration possible, a life bond commitment. Among her people, such a statement would be equivalent to a formal declaration of intent to mate for life. She studied Wintermute's face. Had he just proposed to her? According to the strictest interpretation of her cultural traditions, yes, he had. "You honor me greatly," she said carefully, trying to gauge if he understood the significance of his words. "Just doing my job," he replied with a casual shrug that sent conflicting signals. Was this human ritualistic courtship more complex than her briefing had indicated? As she sipped the second drink, Raina felt something unprecedented, a conflict between mission parameters and personal interest. This human had inadvertently triggered a cultural response that she had never expected to experience on this mission. And the beverage, the sensations it created were beyond anything in her training. Perhaps human weaknesses were more complicated than the council had anticipated. Hank couldn't take his eyes off her. He'd served countless beautiful women over the years, but Raina was different. It wasn't just her exotic appearance, though God knows that was distracting enough. There was something in the way she experienced things, with an intensity that made the jaded New Yorkers around her seem half asleep. "So," he said, leaning against the bar, "what do you think of our city so far?" Raina took another delicate sip, her eyes closing briefly in what looked suspiciously like ecstasy. It is chaotic, inefficient, excessively stimulating. She opened her eyes, fixing him with that emerald gaze, yet fascinating. That's actually the perfect description of New York, Hank laughed. Been here long? I arrived today. And your first stop was a hidden speakeasy? You don't waste time. Time is a finite resource, she replied seriously. I was instructed that bars provide optimal settings for human behavioral observation. Hank raised an eyebrow. Instructed? By who? Your tour guide. A flash of something, alarm, crossed her face, quickly masked. My research advisor. I am studying social anthropology. It was a reasonable explanation, but something didn't quite add up. Her mannerisms were too formal, her reactions too intense for someone simply conducting academic research. But then again, who was he to judge? Maybe she was just socially awkward, or on the spectrum, or both. Well, Professor, what have you observed so far? He asked, deciding to play along. She considered the question with surprising gravity. Humans appear to seek physical proximity despite the discomfort it causes. They consume substances that impair cognitive function for recreational purposes, and they communicate much through nonverbal cues that seem inconsistent with their verbal statements. Damn, you've got us nailed in under an hour, Hank grinned. Any other insights into the weird world of Homo sapiens? You touch each other frequently, she noted, watching a couple at a nearby table who were practically intertwined. Without apparent reproductive intent. Hank nearly choked on his water. That's, one way to put it. Is physical contact always a prelude to mating? Now he was certain he was being punked. This had to be some elaborate performance art piece or a psychology experiment. No actual person talked like this. Not always, he replied carefully. Sometimes it's just nice, comforting, or fun. Fun, she repeated as if testing the word. Physical contact can be categorized as fun? Absolutely. Dancing, for instance. He gestured to the small dance floor where a few couples swayed to the jazz quartet in the corner. Raina studied the dancers with scientific interest. The rhythmic movement serves what purpose if not to attract a mate? Joy, Hank said simply. Human connection. Being present in your body. She seemed to absorb this information like a computer processing new data. Then, to his surprise, she extended her hand across the bar. I would like to experience this non-reproductive physical contact. Hank stared at her outstretched hand, violet against the dark wood of the bar. This was definitely crossing the professional bartender-customer line, but damn if he wasn't intrigued. He reached out, meeting her halfway. Her skin was surprisingly warm, almost feverishly so, and softer than seemed possible. The moment their fingers touched, she inhaled sharply. "Are you okay?" he asked. The sensory feedback is more intense than anticipated. Her fingers tightened slightly around his, but not unpleasant. For a long moment they remained connected across the bar, and Hank had the strangest feeling that something significant was happening, something beyond a bizarre conversation with an attractive stranger. The moment broke when Miguel slammed a cocktail shaker down nearby, giving Hank a not-so-subtle thumbs up. Raina withdrew her hand, but her eyes remained locked on his. "I have many questions about human behaviors," she said. "Perhaps you would be willing to provide further insights?" Was she asking him out? The thought seemed ridiculous given her formal, almost clinical demeanor. And yet, "I get off at 2 a.m., he heard himself say. "If you're still working on your research then, I'd be happy to help." "That would be most efficient," she nodded. "I will return at that time." She stood, leaving her half-finished drink on the bar. Her movements had the same precise quality as when she'd entered, but now Hank noticed a slight, almost imperceptible sway to her hips that hadn't been there before. "Until later, Hank Wintermute," she said. his name sounding strangely formal on her lips. As he watched her weave through the crowd toward the exit, Miguel sidled up next to him. "Dude, what the hell was that? She's either the hottest anthropologist ever or completely insane." "Maybe both," Hank murmured, still feeling the ghost of her touch on his fingers. "She's coming back for you at 2 a.m. Miguel waggled his eyebrows suggestively. "Must be nice to be the chosen one." "Shut up and make your fancy tequila drinks," Hank retorted, but he couldn't help smiling. Outside, Raina stepped into the cool night air, activating her neural implant's recording function. Preliminary assessment. Humans derive extreme pleasure from sensory experiences that serve no evolutionary advantage. Their beverages are irrationally complex. Physical contact triggers neurochemical responses that may impair objective judgment. She paused, looking back at the unmarked door of the Neon Tide. Additional observation. Subject Wintermute has unexpectedly initiated a life bond ritual according to Etherian custom. This development requires further investigation. End recording. As she walked away, Raina experienced another unprecedented feeling: anticipation. For the first time in her career as the Council's top operative, she was looking forward to her next mission objective. And that, she realized, might be the most dangerous human weakness of all. Hank checked his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. 1:57 a.m. 3 minutes until closing. 3 minutes until he'd find out if the violet-skinned woman would actually return. Part of him hoped she wouldn't. Clearly, she was eccentric at best, potentially unstable at worst. But another part, the part that had been sleepwalking through life since Jessica left, craved the jolt of strangeness she'd brought into his night. "She's not coming back, bro," Miguel called as he wiped down the counter. "Women like that don't return for bartenders like us." "Speak for yourself," Hank replied, but the doubt had already crept in. What would someone who looked like her want with... The door swung open, and there she stood. Raina hadn't changed clothes, but something about her seemed different, more focused. Her emerald eyes scanned the now empty bar until they locked onto him, and she strode forward with purpose. "You have completed your assigned duties?" she asked, taking a seat at the bar. "Just finishing up," Hank said, trying to mask his surprise. "Give me 5 minutes to close out?" She nodded once, watching with careful attention as he and Miguel went through the closing routine, counting the register, wiping surfaces, locking the liquor cabinet. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do," Miguel whispered as he headed for the door, giving Hank an exaggerated wink. "That leaves a lot of terrible options open," Hank shot back. When they were alone, an awkward silence fell. The bar, usually vibrating with music and conversation, felt too quiet, too intimate. "So," Hank said, grabbing his jacket. "Late-night anthropological research, huh? You want to grab a bite somewhere? There's a decent diner around the corner that's open 24/7. That would be acceptable." Raina stood, smoothing her dress with precise movements. "I have important information to share with you regarding our new status." "Our new... what now?" "I will explain at this diner establishment." The air outside had cooled considerably, the city streets quieter, but never truly silent. As they walked, Hank noticed how Raina observed everything: the flashing traffic light, a cat slinking along a building ledge, the reflected neon in a puddle, with the same intense focus she'd given his cocktail. "You really aren't from around here, are you?" he asked. "That is correct. My home is very different from this place." "Where exactly is home?" She hesitated. "A great distance away. Your understanding of geography would find it difficult to comprehend." "Try me. I did pass 8th grade. We will discuss it after nourishment." The diner was a classic New York greasy spoon: vinyl booths, fluorescent lighting, and the perpetual smell of bacon. A tired waitress showed them to a booth and slapped down 2 laminated menus. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes, please," Hank said. "I will also consume this coffee beverage," Raina declared. After the waitress left, Raina leaned forward, her posture rigid. "Hank Wintermute, I must inform you of a significant development." "Okay," he said cautiously. According to the sacred traditions of my people, we are now bonded in what your culture might term a marriage. Hank stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he laughed nervously. I'm sorry, what? When you created a unique beverage specifically for me and stated that you don't make this for just anyone and that I was special, you unknowingly activated the primary ritual of life bonding in my culture. She stated this as matter-of-factly as someone might comment on the weather. That's a joke, right? Hank looked around for hidden cameras. Is this some kind of performance art thing? Raina's expression remained deadly serious. I do not engage in humorous deception. This is a formal declaration of our new status. The waitress returned with 2 mugs of coffee, saving Hank from having to respond immediately. He grabbed his and took a long sip, wincing as it burned his tongue. Look, Raina, I think there's been a misunderstanding. In American culture, bartenders sometimes give special drinks to customers. It's just friendly service, not a wedding proposal. I understand your confusion, she replied, cautiously sniffing the coffee before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened momentarily. Another intensely flavorful beverage. Your planet excels at liquid stimulation. My planet? To clarify our situation, she pressed on. I'm not suggesting we immediately adopt all traditional bonding behaviors. However, the ritual has been performed, and I am now obligated to fulfill certain duties. Duties, Hank repeated flatly. Yes, I must now protect and learn from my bonded mate. It is fortunate as this aligns with my mission parameters. Hank put down his coffee mug. Okay, I think we need to back up. Are you saying you're an alien? Raina's perfect composure faltered for the first time. That is not the precise term I would choose, but for simplicity, yes. I am not of Earth origin. A million responses raced through Hank's mind, laughing it off, calling her bluff, asking for proof, suggesting psychiatric help. But as he looked into those impossible green eyes, he remembered his father's journals, filled with increasingly frantic notes about non-terrestrial contact protocols. Let's say, hypothetically, I believed you, he said carefully. What exactly does this bonding mean for me? In the immediate term, it means I will accompany you to continue my research. Your insights into human behavior have proven valuable, and our bonding provides an optimal cover for extended observation. So I'm your research assistant. You are my mate, she corrected. But your Earth customs regarding mating appear more complex than our initial intelligence suggested, so I will adapt my expectations accordingly. Hank ran a hand through his hair, trying to process. Either this woman was completely delusional or his father had been right all along. Prove it, he said suddenly. Prove you're not human. Without warning, Raina reached out and touched his forehead. A jolt of electricity passed between them, not metaphorical but actual electricity that made his hair stand on end and caused the diner's lights to flicker. What the hell? He gasped, pulling back. A minor demonstration of my bioelectric capabilities, she said calmly. My species evolved with natural electrical defense mechanisms. I am currently suppressing most of my abilities to maintain my cover. The waitress approached their table again. You folks ready to order? Hank glanced at his untouched menu, still reeling. Pancakes. Just pancakes. And for your lady friend? I will have. Raina scanned the menu with lightning speed. This Grand Slam breakfast. It appears to offer maximum nutritional variety. After the waitress left, Hank leaned closer, lowering his voice. Let me get this straight. You're an alien who thinks we're married because I made you a special cocktail, and now you're going to follow me around for research? That is an oversimplification, but essentially correct. And what happens when your research is done? A shadow passed over Raina's face. That will depend on my assessment. Assessment of what? Whether your species poses a sufficient threat to galactic stability to warrant preventative measures. The implications hit Hank like a truck. You're here to decide if Earth should be destroyed. Raina nodded calmly. Such determinations are my specialty. I have overseen 17 planetary threat assessments. When necessary, I have recommended neutralization. Hank felt the blood drain from his face. And how many times was it necessary? 15. 3 days later, Hank stood in his cramped apartment bathroom, staring at his reflection. Dark circles underlined his eyes, testament to 72 hours of existential crisis. In the bedroom beyond, he could hear Raina moving with precise efficiency as she prepared for their outing to a nightclub, with an alien assassin who believed they were married and might recommend Earth's destruction. "This is fine," he muttered to his reflection. "Totally normal Saturday night." The past 3 days had been a blur of Raina's ceaseless questions and observations. She'd insisted on accompanying him everywhere, to work, to his apartment, where she'd claimed his couch needing minimal sleep, even to the grocery store, where she'd spent 30 minutes examining different varieties of breakfast cereal with scientific intensity. He'd shown her music, television, books, and the internet, each triggering reactions of fascination. But nothing compared to her response to food and drink. Each new flavor seemed to send her into near rapture, her normally controlled demeanor cracking to reveal genuine wonder. Despite himself, Hank found her oddly endearing. There was something almost innocent about her discovery of human pleasures, like watching a child experience snow for the first time. And beneath her formal exterior, he'd caught glimpses of a dry, subtle humor. "Hank Wintermute," Raina called from the other room. "Is this attire appropriate for a nightclub environment?" He stepped out of the bathroom and froze. Raina had exchanged her simple black dress for a form-fitting silver outfit that clung to every curve of her body. The material seemed to shimmer with its own light, reflecting her violet skin in iridescent waves. Her silver hair was pulled back in a complex braid, accentuating her elegant neck and the sharp angles of her face. "Is it inadequate?" she asked, misinterpreting his silence. "No, it's—" Hank cleared his throat. "It's perfect. You'll probably start a fashion trend." "Excellent. I acquired it using the credit card you provided." "You what?" "The transaction was completed successfully," she assured him. "The vendor was most helpful when I explained I needed appropriate garments to attend a social gathering with my bonded mate." Hank winced. "Could you maybe not tell everyone we're married? People might get the wrong idea." "What idea would be correct?" "That we're friends. Friends who are hanging out." Raina considered this. "Yet in my observation of human relationships, hanging out rarely involves cohabitation and constant proximity." "It's complicated," Hank sighed. "Just, let's say we're dating. That's normal." "Dating," she repeated, testing the word. "A preliminary courtship phase before formal bonding, although in our case the sequence is reversed." "No, there's no—" He stopped, realizing the futility. "Sure, let's go with that." As they headed for the door, Raina paused, her head tilting slightly as though listening to something only she could hear. "What is it?" Hank asked. "Nothing of concern," she said, but her posture had tensed. "Let us proceed to this club environment. I am particularly interested in observing human mating dances." "They're just called dances," Hank corrected. "And please don't refer to anything as a mating ritual while we're out." "I will adjust my terminology," she promised, but there was something distracted in her manner that hadn't been there before. As they stepped onto the street, neither noticed the sleek black vehicle that pulled away from the curb half a block behind them, nor the silver-skinned driver whose crystalline eyes tracked their every move. The hunt had begun. The club throbbed with bass that Hank could feel in his chest. Strobing lights painted the crowd in flashes of blue, red, and purple, the last making Raina's skin appear almost normal in the chaotic lighting. Almost. He watched her take in the scene. Hundreds of bodies pressed together, moving in rhythm, drinking, laughing, shouting over the music. For once, her perfect composure faltered. She looked overwhelmed. "You okay?" he shouted near her ear. "The sensory input is significant," she replied, her eyes darting from the dancers to the bartenders to the DJ booth. So many humans in such proximity, by choice. "That's the point," Hank said, guiding her toward the bar. "Sometimes we like to feel connected." They ordered drinks, another new experience for Raina, this time a colorful cocktail that made her eyes widen at first sip. 3 days of exposure to Earth's pleasures had softened her reactions, but Hank still found himself watching for that moment of discovery on her face. "These serve no nutritional purpose," she observed, taking another appreciative sip. "Yet humans consume them regularly." "Life isn't just about survival," Hank replied. "Sometimes it's about enjoying the ride." Raina considered this. "Your species prioritizes momentary pleasure over long-term efficiency." "We call that living," Hank said with a grin. "Come on, let's dance." He led her to the edge of the dance floor. For a moment she simply observed, analyzing the movements with scientific precision. Then, with characteristic determination, she stepped forward and began to mimic the dancers around her. Her first attempts were awkward, too precise, too calculated, but as the music flowed through her, something changed. Her movements became fluid, natural, her body finding the rhythm with increasing confidence. "You're a fast learner," Hank shouted over the music. "I am designed for rapid adaptation," she replied, but there was a new light in her eyes, something like joy. As the night progressed, they moved closer together, the press of the crowd bringing them into inevitable contact. The first time Hank's hand brushed her waist, a small spark jumped between them, making him yelp. "Sorry," Raina said, looking genuinely contrite. "My bioelectric control falters with certain stimuli." "It's fine," Hank assured her, more intrigued than concerned. When the DJ shifted to a slower track, Raina looked at him uncertainly. "This appears to be a different protocol," she observed. "Slow dancing," Hank explained. "Here, like this." He hesitantly placed his hands on her waist, and after a moment's consideration she rested hers on his shoulders. "This proximity seems inefficient for movement," she noted, but made no effort to create distance. Efficiency isn't really the goal here. As they swayed together, Hank became acutely aware of her warmth, the faint electric current that seemed to pulse beneath her skin, the way her eyes studied his face with unwavering attention. "Your heart rate has increased by 27%, she observed. "That tends to happen when you're dancing with a beautiful woman." "You find my appearance pleasing despite its non-human characteristics." Hank laughed. "I find your appearance pleasing because of its non-human characteristics." Something in his tone made her pause, her head tilting slightly. "This is flirtation." "Maybe. I have observed this behavior between humans, but have not experienced it directly." She paused, then added with clinical precision, "It creates an unexpected neural response." Good, unexpected, or bad, unexpected? Instead of answering, Raina leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The contact was tentative, exploratory, and accompanied by a jolt of electricity that made all the lights in the club flicker momentarily. When she pulled back, her eyes were wide with surprise. "That was not in my mission parameters." Before Hank could respond, the music cut out abruptly. The crowd groaned in disappointment as the lights came on to full brightness. "Technical difficulties, folks," announced the DJ. "Give us a few minutes to sort it out." "Did you do that?" Hank asked quietly. Raina looked genuinely embarrassed. "I may have caused a power surge," My species uses electromagnetic pulses during moments of heightened emotional response. So that kiss really was electric, Hank joked, trying to lighten the moment. But Raina had gone rigid, her attention suddenly fixed on something across the room. Following her gaze, Hank spotted two figures by the entrance, unnaturally tall, wearing dark suits despite the club's heat, their features obscured by the crowd. "We need to leave," Raina said, all warmth vanishing from her voice. "Immediately." "What's wrong?" "They found me." She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the rear exit. "Move quickly, but don't run. Don't draw attention." "Who's found you?" Hank demanded, but allowed himself to be led through the crowd. "Enforcement specialists," she replied tersely. "If they're here, the council has deemed me compromised." They slipped through the back door into an alley. Raina moved with renewed purpose, scanning their surroundings with predatory focus. "Your apartment isn't safe," she said. "We need alternative shelter. I have a friend who—" "No. No other humans can be involved. This is beyond your understanding." Hank pulled his hand from her grip. "Then help me understand, Raina. What exactly is going on?" She turned to face him, her expression grave. "I have violated protocol by forming an emotional attachment to a subject species. The Council does not permit such deviations. They will terminate me and proceed with their original assessment of Earth's threat level." "Which was what?" "Neutralization was the preliminary recommendation." The implication hit Hank like a physical blow. "They're going to destroy Earth? Billions of people?" "Not if we prevent it," Raina said with sudden determination. "But first we must evade capture." As if on cue, the alley entrance filled with a cold blue light. Two figures stepped into view, humanoid but wrong somehow, their movements too fluid, their proportions slightly off. Raina pushed Hank behind her. "Run when I create an opening," she whispered. "Find shelter. I will locate you." "I'm not leaving you." "This is not a discussion." Her skin began to glow faintly, electrical energy gathering around her hands. "These are elite operatives. You cannot fight them." The figures advanced, their features becoming clearer. Their skin had a silvery sheen, and their eyes were entirely crystalline, reflecting the alley's dim light like mirrors. "Specialist Alistar," one called, its voice unnaturally melodic. "You have compromised the mission. Return for extraction and purification." "I reject the extraction order," Raina replied, her voice taking on a formal cadence Hank hadn't heard before. "I invoke the right of independent assessment." "Denied," the second figure stated. "You have been contaminated by subject species contact. Compliance is mandatory." "Then compliance is impossible," Raina said, and attacked. What followed was unlike anything Hank had ever seen. Raina moved faster than should have been physically possible, her body leaving trails of light as she launched herself at the agents. Electricity arced from her hands, striking one of the figures and sending it staggering backward. The second agent countered with some kind of energy weapon that sliced through the air where Raina had been a split second earlier. She dodged, flipped, and delivered a kick that would have shattered a human's ribcage. The agent merely stumbled. "Go!" she shouted at Hank, who stood frozen in shock. This time he ran, sprinting down the alley as the sounds of battle echoed behind him. He made it halfway to the street when something struck the wall beside his head, showering him with brick fragments. A third agent had appeared, cutting off his escape. Before Hank could react, Raina was there, flying through the air in a blur of violet and silver. She collided with the new attacker, both of them crashing into a dumpster with enough force to dent its metal side. "Get to your vehicle," she shouted, grappling with the agent. Hank ran for his car, parked 2 blocks away. Behind him, the night lit up with flashes of energy and the sound of inhuman combat. He reached his beat-up Honda, fumbling with the keys when a hand grabbed his shoulder. He spun around, expecting another silver-skinned attacker, but found Raina instead. Her dress was torn. A strange, iridescent fluid leaked from a cut on her forehead, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. "Drive," she commanded, pushing him toward the driver's seat. "I have disabled them temporarily, but Reinforcements will come. As they peeled away from the curb, Hank glanced in the rearview mirror. The three agents stood in the middle of the street, watching them go with expressionless faces. "What the hell were those things?" he gasped. "Etherian enforcers," Raina replied, checking the wound on her forehead with clinical detachment. "Elite bioengineered operatives. Like you? Similar in design, different in purpose. I was created for assessment and execution. They exist solely to maintain council protocols." She looked at him gravely. "They will not stop until I am retrieved or destroyed." "Jesus," Hank muttered. "Where do we go now?" Raina considered for a moment. "Is there a location sufficiently distant from population centers where we would not endanger others?" Hank thought of his grandmother's farm upstate. Isolated, abandoned since her death 2 years ago, but still in the family. "Yeah," he said, "I know a place." The farmhouse stood silhouetted against the dawn sky, weathered and lonely on its hilltop perch. Hank killed the engine, the sudden silence emphasizing how far they'd come from the city's constant noise. "We should be safe here for a while," he said, leading Raina toward the porch. "No neighbors for miles." Inside, the house was dusty but intact. Hank found some emergency candles and lit them, unwilling to risk turning on lights that might be visible from the road. Raina examined the space with her usual methodical attention. "This dwelling is significantly different from your urban habitat." "It was my grandmother's," Hank explained. "She left it to me, but I haven't had the heart to sell it or move in." "You maintain an emotional attachment to an uninhabited structure." "I maintain an emotional attachment to the memories it holds," he corrected. "Humans do that." Raina nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to understand such attachments." In the candlelight, with her silver dress torn and dirty, her perfect composure finally cracked, she looked almost vulnerable. Hank realized with a start that he'd begun to care for this strange, deadly woman, alien or not. "Let me look at that cut," he said, gesturing to her forehead. "The damage is superficial," she assured him. "My cellular regeneration will repair it within hours. Still, we should clean it." He found an ancient first aid kit in the bathroom and returned to find Raina standing by the window, watching the sky with wary eyes. As he dabbed at the wound with an antiseptic wipe, she regarded him curiously. "You are assisting me despite knowing I was sent to potentially condemn your world." "Yeah, well, you're fighting against that now, aren't you?" "Yes," she said simply. "My initial assessment was flawed. Earth should be preserved." "Because of cocktails and dancing?" A smile ghosted across her lips. "Partially, but more because I have observed something my species has forgotten, the value of inefficiency, of pleasure, of connection." Her eyes met his, and Hank felt that same electric current pass between them, gentler now but unmistakable. "Is that why you kissed me?" he asked. "For research?" "No," she admitted. "That was unplanned, a response to unfamiliar stimuli." "Good stimuli?" "Very good," she confirmed, her voice dropping lower. This time, Hank leaned in first. Their lips met, and though he braced for it, the electrical shock was milder, a pleasant buzz rather than a system overload. Raina's arms wrapped around him with careful restraint, as though she feared breaking him. What began as exploration quickly deepened into something more urgent. Clothes were discarded, candlelight flickering over violet skin and human flesh alike. Every touch brought new discoveries. The way her skin emitted soft light when aroused, how her controlled breathing gave way to gasps of surprise and pleasure, the remarkable adaptability of an alien physiology designed to learn quickly. Later, as they lay tangled together on his grandmother's ancient couch, the first rays of sunlight filtering through dusty windows, Raina traced patterns on his chest with a fingertip that left trails of gentle light. "This was not part of my cultural research protocol," she mused. "I should hope not," Hank laughed. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when a distant rumble shook the house. Raina sat up, suddenly alert. "They've found us," she said, moving to the window. In the distance, a pinpoint of light grew rapidly larger, descending from the sky. "How?" Hank demanded, scrambling for his clothes. My electromagnetic signature, she replied grimly. The release of energy during our coupling would have been detectable from orbit. Hank stared at her. Are you saying they tracked us through extraterrestrial intimacy? A simplified but accurate assessment, she confirmed, already pulling on her torn dress. We must move immediately. As they rushed outside, the light resolved into a sleek silver craft descending toward the farm. Beside it, the barn began to shake, its wooden beams groaning. Get to the car, Raina ordered. But before they could move, the barn exploded in a shower of splinters and dust. From the debris emerged a figure, not the silver-skinned enforcers from the alley, but something larger, its body encased in armor that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. Specialist Alistar, it called, its voice reverberating unnaturally. Protocol demands your termination. The human subject will be harvested for study. Raina stepped forward, placing herself between Hank and the threat. I reject all protocols, she declared. I have made my assessment. Earth is under my protection now. Then you will die with it, the enforcer replied. As it charged toward them, Raina turned to Hank, her eyes glowing with intense emotion. Regardless of the outcome, she said quickly, know that our bond was real, not just by my culture's standards, but by the metrics that truly matter. Before Hank could respond, she launched herself at the enforcer, her body emanating so much electrical energy that she became a living comet streaking across the farmyard. The collision shook the ground beneath Hank's feet, and he knew with sudden certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The collision between Raina and the enforcer created a shockwave that knocked Hank off his feet. He scrambled up in time to see them locked in combat, a blur of silver and violet, punctuated by flashes of electrical energy that scorched the ground around them. The enforcer was larger, its liquid metal armor absorbing Raina's electrical attacks, but she moved with lethal precision, targeting joints and exposed circuits. For every blow she landed, however, the enforcer seemed to adapt, its armor reconfiguring to protect vulnerable points. "Run, Hank!" Raina shouted, narrowly dodging a strike that pulverized the ground where she'd stood. But Hank remained frozen, watching as the woman he'd improbably fallen for fought an alien killing machine. In that moment, his father's words echoed in his mind. If they ever come, son, remember, they're not gods, just beings with different rules. The enforcer caught Raina with a glancing blow, sending her flying into the remains of the barn. Before she could recover, it turned its attention to Hank. Human subject, it intoned. Resistance is not advised. Hank ran, not away but toward his car. The enforcer followed with mechanical inevitability, each step shaking the earth. Hank reached the car, yanked open the trunk, and grabbed the battered metal box he'd brought from his apartment, his father's emergency kit. The enforcer loomed over him. Surrender for processing. How about a drink instead? Hank retorted, his fingers finding the strange device his father had labeled Handshake Protocol XJ7. He had no idea what it did, but as the enforcer reached for him, he activated it. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the enforcer staggered back, its liquid metal armor rippling with interference patterns. Raina materialized beside him, her dress in tatters, iridescent blood streaking her violet skin. What did you do? No idea, Hank admitted. My dad left it, said it was for unwelcome visitors. The enforcer recovered quickly, its armor stabilizing. Primitive technology, it stated dismissively. Inadequate. It raised an arm that transformed into a cannon-like appendage. Before it could fire, Raina grabbed Hank and accelerated with inhuman speed, zigzagging across the farmyard as energy blasts tore up the ground behind them. We can't beat it here, she gasped. Too isolated, no advantages. What about somewhere crowded, somewhere with lots of distractions? Raina hesitated. Civilian casualties would be, not if we choose the right place, Hank insisted. Somewhere with lots of electricity, metal, complicated systems you could use. Understanding dawned in her eyes. A location with infrastructure I could manipulate. I know just the place, Hank said, thinking of the vintage amusement park at the edge of town. Wonderland with its metal rides, electrical systems, and maze-like layout. But we need to move fast. As if on cue, the silver craft descended lower, disgorging 3 more enforcers that landed with precise, earth-shaking impacts. "The car won't outrun them," Reyna said grimly. "It doesn't have to." Hank pulled the enforcer device from his pocket. "We just need a head start." He activated it again, directing it at the approaching enforcers. They slowed momentarily, their movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. It was enough. They sprinted to the car, Reyna sliding across the hood with balletic grace as Hank threw himself into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and they tore down the dirt road, the farmhouse receding in the rearview mirror as 4 silver figures watched their escape. "They're not pursuing," Reyna noted, scanning the sky. "Why?" "They don't need to," Hank realized. "They know we can't escape the planet." "They will track us to this amusement park and bring more forces," she agreed. "We are merely choosing our battleground." "Then let's make it count," Hank said, pressing the accelerator to the floor. Wonderland stood abandoned in the early morning light, its rides silent sentinels waiting for the day's visitors. The park wouldn't open for hours, giving them time to prepare. "Perfect," Reyna murmured, taking in the metal structures towering above them. Her eyes lingered on the massive Ferris wheel at the center of the park. That could serve as a transmitter. For what? "My neural implant contains all data I've collected on Earth. If I can boost its signal strength enough, I might reach our subspace relay and transmit directly to the Council." "You think they'll listen?" "They must," she said with fierce determination. "They need to see what I've seen, feel what I've—" She hesitated, glancing at him. "What I've felt." They broke into the control room near the entrance, an easy task with Reyna's strength. Inside, Hank examined the park's systems while Reyna kept watch. "I think I can reroute power to the Ferris wheel," he said, studying the control panels. "Create your transmitter." "That would make it a target," she warned. "Exactly. We draw them to the wheel while you prepare the real transmitter elsewhere." Reyna's eyes widened slightly. Deception, not typically an Etherian tactic. "Welcome to Earth," Hank grinned. "We specialize in fighting dirty when outgunned." They worked quickly, Hank applying what he remembered from his father's journals about alien technology, while Reyna modified the park's electrical systems. As the sun rose higher, they completed their preparations. "They're coming," Reyna said suddenly, her head tilting in that now familiar way. "Multiple crafts. The Council has escalated this to a full elimination response." Hank's stomach dropped. "How long do we have?" "Minutes." He reached for her, pulling her close. "If this doesn't work—" "It will," she interrupted, her hand against his cheek. "It must." The kiss they shared was brief but electric, literally, as small sparks danced across Hank's skin. "For luck," he said. "Luck is not a factor in statistical outcomes," she replied automatically, then added with a small smile, "but I appreciate the gesture." They separated, each to their assigned position. Hank headed for the carousel, modified to serve as their true transmitter, while Reyna moved toward the Ferris wheel, their decoy. The first silver craft appeared above the park minutes later, hovering over the Ferris wheel as Hank had predicted. From his hiding place, he watched as 5 enforcers descended, followed by a new figure, taller, more elaborate in design, its armor bearing insignia that marked it as a commander. "Specialist Alistar," the commander's voice boomed across the park. "Your defection is confirmed. Surrender for termination." Reyna stepped out from behind the wheel's base, her posture defiant. "Commander Champ, I should have expected they'd send you." "Your tactics are predictable," Champ replied. "The Council anticipated your attempt to transmit. We have already disabled your relay." For the first time, Hank saw genuine fear flash across Reyna's face. Without the relay, their plan was doomed. "You forget, Champ," she called back, playing for time. "I was top of our tactical class." She launched herself at the commander with explosive speed, electricity crackling around her like a living aura. The other enforcers moved to intercept, but Reyna was a purple blur, dancing between them, striking with precision that sent sparks flying from their armor. Hank seized his opportunity. While the enforcers focused on Reyna, he sprinted to the maintenance shed where he'd stashed his father's strange devices. One in particular, labeled Broadcast Override, might solve their relay problem. As he emerged, device in hand, he found himself face to face with an enforcer. "Human subject," it intoned. "Surrender for processing." "You guys need new material," Hank muttered, activating the device and flinging it at the enforcer's feet. Nothing happened. The enforcer stepped forward, its arm reshaping into a blade. "Primitive weapons are ineffective." "Yeah, I'm starting to get that," Hank admitted, backing away. Just as the enforcer lunged, the device at its feet activated with a high-pitched whine. The enforcer froze, its liquid metal armor solidifying into rigid crystalline formations. Hank didn't question his luck. He bolted toward the carousel, dodging between rides and concession stands. Behind him, the sounds of battle intensified. Metal tearing, energy discharges, and Reyna's war cries. He reached the carousel and connected the override device to their makeshift transmitter. The horses began to rotate slowly, electrical current flowing through their metal frames. Now they just needed Reyna to... A body crashed through the carousel's canopy, splintering wood and shattering mirrors. Reyna landed hard, her violet skin dulled with injury, silver blood pooling beneath her. "Reyna!" Hank rushed to her side. "The commander," she gasped. "Too strong. Adapted to my attacks." Commander Champ descended through the broken canopy, its armor unmarred despite the battle. "Primitive," it stated coldly. As expected. Hank stood, placing himself between Champ and Reyna. "We're full of surprises." From his jacket he produced a flask, not one of his father's devices, but something equally powerful in its own way. "Cocktail?" he offered, unscrewing the cap. Champ paused, its featureless face somehow expressing confusion. "You offer a beverage during elimination." "Not just any beverage," Hank replied. "My special recipe, the one that started all this." He flung the contents at Champ's face. The liquid splashed across the commander's armor, some finding its way through breathing apertures. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the commander staggered, its armor rippling strangely. A sound emerged, not mechanical but organic, almost like pleasure. What is this?" Champ demanded, its voice fluctuating between outrage and unexpected delight. "Just a little earth magic," Hank said, helping Reyna to her feet. "Now, honey, I think it's time for your broadcast." Reyna's eyes widened in understanding. She grabbed the commander, her hands glowing with electrical energy that surged through Champ's compromised systems and into the carousel's transmitter. "Initiating neural dump," she announced, her voice taking on that formal cadence. "Transmitting full experiential data to Council mainframe." The carousel blazed with light, the horses rotating faster as they channeled Reyna's transmission. Images flickered across the mirrors. New York streets, the neon-lit bar, Hank mixing drinks, their dance in the club, their night at the farm, all filtered through Reyna's alien perception, rich with sensory data and emotional context. "Stop this," Champ commanded, but its voice lacked conviction, still affected by Hank's cocktail. "The Council will see everything," Reyna declared. "The beauty of this world, the joy, the value of what you would destroy." The transmission reached its peak, light pouring from the carousel in all directions. Then, abruptly, it ceased. Reyna collapsed, her energy depleted. Hank caught her, cradling her against his chest. Champ stood frozen, its systems apparently overloaded by the transmission. "Did it work?" Hank whispered. Before Reyna could answer, the sky above Wonderland filled with silver crafts, dozens of them, far more than they could hope to fight. "Too late," she murmured. "They've come to finish it." But the crafts didn't attack. Instead, they hung motionless, as if waiting. A beam of light shot down from the largest vessel, materializing into a figure Hank recognized from Reyna's descriptions, the Grand Architect, leader of the Etherian Council. Specialist Alistar, the ancient being intoned, approaching with measured steps. "We have received your transmission." Reyna struggled to stand, facing her leader with dignity despite her injuries. "And your judgment, Architect?" The grand architect surveyed the damaged amusement park, his gaze lingering on Hank. Unprecedented. In 17,000 cycles, no assessment specialist has ever reached your conclusion. Because no specialist has ever truly experienced their subject world, Raina countered. We observe, we analyze, but we never connect. Yes, the architect agreed, surprising them both. A flaw in our methodology, perhaps. He raised a six-fingered hand and Commander Champ snapped to attention, shaking off the effects of Hank's cocktail. The elimination order is rescinded, the architect declared. Earth will be reclassified as a protected cultural asset. Its unique, sensory contributions have value beyond our previous understanding. Hank released the breath he'd been holding. So we're not going to be destroyed? The architect turned those ancient eyes on him. No, human. Your world is safe. More than safe. It is now of special interest to our collective. Meaning? Meaning, Raina explained, a smile spreading across her face. Earth just became the most exclusive tourist destination in the galaxy. 3 months later, Hank mixed drinks at the Neon Tide, his movements precise and confident as he crafted another of his signature cocktails. The bar had changed. Subtle alien technology integrated into its systems, an exclusive clientele that now included the occasional non-human visitor disguised to blend with the crowd. Another masterpiece, Miguel commented, watching Hank put the finishing touches on a vibrant blue concoction. You're going to put me out of business when you open your own place. Our place, Hank corrected. The contract's ready whenever you are. Still can't believe we got alien investors, Miguel muttered. Or that your wife is technically our visa officer. Life's full of surprises, Hank replied, glancing toward the end of the bar where Raina sat, deep in conversation with what appeared to be a Wall Street banker, but was actually the Etherian cultural attaché. Her position as Earth's liaison to the Etherian collective kept her busy, managing the strictly controlled tourism program that brought carefully vetted visitors to experience Earth's unique pleasures. But she always made time to end her day at Hank's bar. As the attaché departed, Hank approached with a fresh cocktail, amber liquid, citrus garnish, the drink that had started it all. For you, he said, sliding it across the bar. Special recipe, just for my favorite customer. Raina's eyes, still that impossible emerald green with gold flecks, lit up with amusement. Are you proposing again, Hank Wintermute? Just renewing my vows, he replied with a grin, though I'm still not clear on whether we're actually married by Earth standards. By Etherian law, we are bonded for life, she stated matter-of-factly. But if you prefer human customs, I could arrange a more traditional ceremony. Nah, Hank said, leaning across the bar. I think I like being the only guy on Earth with an alien wife. She took a sip of her cocktail, her eyes closing briefly in appreciation. After months of Earth's pleasures, she'd learned to control her reactions, but Hank could still see the tiny sparks that danced across her skin when something delighted her. You know, he said thoughtfully, if I ever meet someone else, I would eliminate her immediately, Raina cut in, her tone deadly serious despite the slight curve of her lips. Hank laughed. That's what I love about you, always so reasonable. I am anything but reasonable when it comes to you, she replied, reaching across the bar to touch his hand. A small spark jumped between them, familiar and comforting now. He raised his glass. To the strangest marriage in galactic history. Raina clinked her glass against his, and to the cocktail that saved a world. As she drank, the lights above the bar flickered briefly, a small reminder of the extraordinary bond between them. Outside, high above New York's skyline, a sleek silver craft slipped invisibly through the night clouds, bringing another group of elite galactic tourists eager to experience the small blue planet that had suddenly become the most coveted destination in the known universe. Its promotional materials featured a simple tagline, Earth, where pleasure is an art form. And in smaller text, no refunds for emotional attachments to natives. The end.